guys, welcome back to the Building Blocks of Business, a podcast show where we dive in and explore various aspects of the business world. This show is brought to you by eCell NITK in association with NITK Toastmasters Club. I am your host Sahana Praveen Bhandari, a second year BTech student in the Electrical and Electronics Engineering department. Today, you are listening to the third episode of Season 2, Startup Stories, a season which introduces you to entrepreneurship and goes through the journey and the various endeavors in the life of an entrepreneur. In today's conversation, I get to sit with the CEO of Invento Robotics. Having started his career as a developer at Microsoft Redmond and working for multiple startups in USA, he has a master's degree from the University of Maryland and an MBA from the Babson College. Our guest today is Balaji Vishwanathan. Hi, sir. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Hi, guys. This is a great time for us. It's the end of the year, and it is lovely to talk to you all.
Sir, we've all heard about Inventor Robotics, and we would love to hear more about it from you. So, do tell us about yourself and your company.
Absolutely. Hi, my name is Balaji Vishwanathan. I run this startup called Invento Robotics. We are a team of 30 people at this point, and so we are building these robots that help hospitals do a range of automation. And we are exporting these robots to 5 countries, including US, Singapore, and Australia. My background is I started my career at Microsoft in Redmond as a software developer. I was in the Windows Core operating system team. And then overall, I spent nearly 10 years in the US working for multiple companies in the Bay Area and in Boston. I have a master's in computer science from University of Maryland, and I have an MBA from Babson College. So that's a quick intro from me. And in case of the company, so we are, the way in which we see the world is there are going to be robots everywhere by the end of 2030. So we see a world that is going to be ubiquitous, with robots, just as common as the mobile phones now. And we want to be the leading player bringing this robotics revolution. Our robots do 3 key things. The first biggest thing is they are extremely good conversational ones. So these robots use computer vision to be able to recognize people, identify their presence, recognize their emotions, and so on. And then they use the natural language processing and voice recognition to be able to get into a deeper conversation with them. This conversation is a central element of Mithra, and this is especially very important in places like healthcare. And then the second portion of it is we have a very strong autonomous navigation system that allows the robots to go around and engage in a larger environment. And then the third key portion of it is these robots have the ability to bring in a range of third-party sensors, including stethoscopes and so on, to be able to engage with patients amazingly well. So in the next 2 years, our goal is to completely revolutionize healthcare, and then go from there to write a chapter on robotics.
That sounds very interesting. Sir, I happened to come across a piece written by you where you mentioned that growing up, you noticed that there was no Indian name in the field of technology, and that somehow inspired you. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. So a few years ago, one of my mentors asked a very pertinent question. So his thing is name one like strong engineering role model that you have who is like right now who is right now working. So who's in service. So people go to Kalam or to Vishweshwaraya and so on. But then if we talk about now, it becomes quite a hard thing to actually talk about strong engineering role models. And India as a country, we have not built as good products that can especially be talked about on a global scale. So that is a key thing, like a key mission, I would say, in my life. How do we put India on a global products map and enable the rest of the world to talk about Indian products.
So, in your journey of achieving and creating an opportunity for fellow Indians to leave their mark in the field of technology, how did entrepreneurship come along?
So I've been look, I've been trying to be an entrepreneur for a long time. In fact, I grew up in villages, and my father was a bank manager over there, and so you would loan to various small companies that would build something quite interesting. Some of them in farming, some of them growing mushrooms, some of them building like scientific equipments and so on. It was fascinating to see something built out of nothing. And so this is something from childhood. I was very fascinated about the concept of entrepreneurship. I didn't know much about technology or startups and so on, but I was really enamored with the concept of business. And over the years, I've tried multiple ones, tried many, failed many. But this is entrepreneurship is a fascinating thing to me because it creates something out of nothing. And then so it is the 0 to 1 revolution that entrepreneurship creates. Then once you have one, then you can scale up, you can build something bigger out of it. But entrepreneurship at its core is, how do we create something out of nothing? That is quite a fascinating thing to me, even during childhood.
And how has your journey of creating something from nothing been? Has it been a roller coaster ride too?
Probably a lot of downs and few ups. So I would compare this thing, running a product startup, especially a hardware startup, to playing in test match, especially in challenging conditions. If you know test cricket, there's a long periods of boredom and survival, but those are very important if you have to create a big mark in your game. It's very true in entrepreneurship too. So my first formal startup was 11 years ago. So I was in my early 20s, and I was really enamored by the concept of online education. So I got a whole bunch of content from top universities and built a virtual university called Nalanda U, which would allow people to study for free online, take courses, get certificates, and so on. So this was very novel, because at that time you didn't have Udacity, Udemy, Coursera, none of these things that you would call as online education. We were among the first in the game, and trying to convince people about online education was a very challenging one. So that was my first thing with startup, and then I've also ran other startups which are also very early in the game. And then 4 years ago, decided to start a robotics company, and this time I knew that we are going to be very early in the game, but then this time stick in for a long enough time, and then keep building the interesting stuff, and eventually one day world would notice. So that has been the story, like a lot of test match collecting. So if you follow test, it is like Pujara's batting a lot of times where there is nothing happening, but those are the very important moments when you create things of value.
Sir, so I know that you were a part of the delegation that represented India in the World Economic Forum in 2018. Tell us about that experience.
Meeting a whole bunch of other startups, as well as world leaders. It was an amazing experience. And then so there was a range of talk sessions where you could go and meet some of the best CEOs, some of the best leaders, some of the best designers, and so on. So I was there in 2018 and 2019. So it was quite a very revealing experience. It's the World Economic Forum. It's a whole world in itself, and I would encourage many of the young people in you. So you guys could apply to become global shapers, and if you get through that program, it could really help you change a lot of things in society, and truly shape the world around you. So the meeting those very young, smart minds was the most revealing experience in visiting the World Economic Forum.
You spoke about Mithra. I hear he has two more friends, and the three of them together have been helping us fight the pandemic. Tell us about them. We're engineering students, and we would be more than eager to hear about them.
Absolutely. We have been looking at trying to solve the healthcare problem, not just during COVID, but in the post-COVID scenario. How do we? The healthcare system has been quite broken for a long time. Broken in the sense that it has become quite unaffordable, quite expensive, and not as much driven by data as it should be. So our first robot came in April on the healthcare front. So it was a disinfection robot. So we built this robot with carrying UV radiation, and we were able to build it on our core autonomous navigation technology. Getting robots to move on their own in complex environments, it's an extremely challenging task that only a handful of companies in the world were able to even reasonably do. And what we did with Astra, our first disinfection robot, was enabling this robot to go around hospital corridors as well as in warehouses, because these are the places where there's a lot of disease spread was happening, because a lot of goods movement or patient movement happening. So that was the first big break that we got, building these disinfection robots. And they use the state of the art slam navigation. So the like if you ask your core CS friends, they would be talking about like the simultaneous localization and mapping, the slam technology. But then these are still, in most places just in the research concept. These are not in factories or in hospitals and other places. What we have done is we were able to build a strong product out of the research concept, and we're able to run these robots in these hospitals. That was our first big break. And then we also remade our Mithra into a full-fledged healthcare robot. So the Mithra, when you walk into a hospital, the Mithra can recognize your face, can recognize whether you are wearing a mask and so on, and then can take a temperature even if you are 4 or 5 feet away, all with thermal imagings and technology. And then it can talk to you, get your name, get your symptoms, and then get you registered into the system, and so on. So a lot of the like the data collection process, it was taking off the doctors and nurses, so that the nurses and doctors can focus on the pure diagnostic aspect. So this thing grew quite a bit. And so now we are seeing a huge demand for this worldwide, both for COVID crisis and the post-COVID world, where you can use the robots to automate a lot of the mundane tasks. In every sector, we were there's a lot of automation came in to reduce costs and improve productivity. But healthcare, not as much automation have come so far. But this crisis has enabled some of this automation to come, and very, very interesting ways in which AI can be used over there. That would enable a huge cutting of costs for the patients, which is one of the biggest problem in healthcare at this point.
Over the pandemic, everybody has been trying to avoid visiting hospitals. However, now everyone's going to want to visit hospitals just to meet Mithra. So, sir, what are your future plans? And also, what about Inventor Robotics?
Over the last 4 years, we have built in a strong technology in conversation and autonomous navigation. And what we have now started doing is putting these technologies in place for changing healthcare. So the big thing is we are trying to create almost unmanned hospital. These could be in even in rural areas where the robot will be moving around. It could be in bus stands, it could be in libraries, and so on. Meet people, and then be able to collect a lot of data from just conversation. And then once the robot has found out enough data, and also collect vitals including BP, stethoscope readings, and so on, then finally connect a doctor. The doctor can then see you and make a quick diagnosis, and the robot will print a prescription and give it to you. The doctor can now treat and diagnose patients who are anywhere in the world, bringing significant access to healthcare. And more importantly, doctor can actually do the diagnosis at a third of the time it takes. That means they can treat 3 times more patients, which would substantially expand the healthcare access. So this thing is receiving a lot of interest in the US market. So we are going to be putting up a lot of emphasis on the US market expansion. So it is funny in a way. Normally, companies would build their state of the art technology in the US and then take it to developing countries like India. So we are trying to do the reverse. So we have built the hot technology in India, and US or Europe does not have this technology at this point. So we are now taking this technology and starting to deploy it in top hospitals over there. So the next 2 years, it's going to be made in India product, but that is going to be deployed in top US hospitals. So that's a big thing coming up over the next few months.
That makes me and probably all of our listeners very proud to hear. What are your plans for yourself in the coming few years?
So my goal is, how do we build? So there are three spheres in which I place my life. So the one is bringing up the company itself. So the inventors' goals and visions, which we want to I want it to someday take it to IPO at Nasdaq. So create a huge product company that was built in India. So that is my vision with respect to Invento, and create amazing robots out there. These robots, the way of the world in which I imagine is going to be hundreds of type of robots that are going to be all around you, cleaning your windows and floors, engaging with your children, taking care of your parents and grandparents, and then fighting crime on the streets, and then unclogging the drainage underneath, and so on. So it's going to be a lot of very, very interesting stuff the robots are going to be doing. So that's how I imagine on the inventors this thing to be. How do we create newer and newer interesting robots? This is one. Then on the community front, what I want to do is I want to keep engaging with smart students like you and your entire campus. So we want to be I want to be building something like a sort of a hardware ecosystem out of India. India has got an amazing engineering brain, I would say. So our engineers go on to lead Google and Microsoft and a range of global companies. So we have all the smartness in us, but then we are not creating all that value within the country. So this is what we want to as a community want to change is bring all these smarter people like you, and see how best I can help to start out with probably providing inspiration, motivation, and then probably providing internships and connections and so on, and eventually mentoring some of your companies to become world class companies. Then once you have world class engineering companies, not just software, not just some services wrapped with software, but hardcore technology companies, whether it is in healthcare, waste management, battery technology, solar technology or fuel cells, biotechnology, and so on. So a range of technical this thing can be created that I want India to create, and I want to play a role in helping some of you in creating that. So that's what I would say my big non-inventor related goal for this decade.
So, entrepreneurship is a very difficult path to tread. And now that you have walked through that path, what is your advice for future entrepreneurs?
Absolutely. So entrepreneurship, say, do not be just enamored by the sort of the final results of the entrepreneurship. So you might be reading about top people the Baiju or this thing, the success stories with Ritesh Agarwal and so on. So you might be reading the final outcomes, but do not just be too this thing fixated on that. Entrepreneurship is a journey of creating something amazing, something out of nothing. So like when you were a child, like 2-3 years old, when you were given a piece of paper, you would like start scribbling, like take your color pencils and crayons and draw something interesting. So you would not leave a empty white paper on this thing. You would draw something, you'd color something. Entrepreneurship is that thing. So you see a problem, and then you create a solution for that. Fame and all those things can be a resultant of that, but do not plan too much into that. The problem is when you try to fix it too much on the few success stories, like say the Baijus or the Ritesh's. What you might end up is like you might get dejected, disappointed, and so on. So remember, there's a lot of luck and lottery effect also involved. Even during my journey, we have done a lot of hard work, but at the same time we also got like some lucky break in the middle. So that's what I would say is if you struggle long enough and then try to survive long enough, periodically you might get that lucky break that you might have to utilize. So yes, that there might be this element of luck could come in, but then do not plan too much on the final aspects of it. Really look for entrepreneurship as something, the act of creation itself. It is like writing, it is like taking a movie, or it is like scribbling, it is like painting. It is creating something out of nothing. So focus on that thing. And when you decide to become an entrepreneur, there are like 2-3 phases. In the initial phase, you don't have to be a startup. You don't have to do a startup just because your friends are doing. Do not get into the peer pressure mode. Start doing something interesting that you might like. So for instance, if you are good at painting, you could paint interesting stuff and then sell it online. Or you could be giving tuition of your strengths in mechanical engineering and put it out. Or you might even create an online course in Udemy and then sell that course. So it could be anything. So initially you could create this thing without a lot of risk. But once you decide to go into a startup mode, then prepare to spend 3 to 5 years in that thing. It is a long, hard journey, and greatness is built when you go on a long, hard journey and long enough periods of time. So it's a fascinating journey. It's not made for everyone. At least a full-time startup, this thing, because it is quite a hard journey. But then being an entrepreneur, you don't have to have a startup. You don't have to be a full-time working on it. As I said, you could create a course. You could sell your painting. You could create a new design. All of these things you can do and be an entrepreneur. So being an entrepreneur is a state of the mind. Okay, it is all about creation.
What is it that you look for in people while hiring them? Or what is the message that you would want to give to those who want to be a part of this startup ecosystem?
I try to hire a wide range of interesting people. Overall, I've hired over the years about 70 to 75 people, and then these range from top IITs like IIT Kanpur, IIT Madras, Georgia Tech, and so on, and then all the way to our neighborhood, the slums near us, where again we find extremely smart talent too. So that the first key portion of any person I'm looking at is this person having the right attitude to actually learn and build something very, very interesting. It is especially very, very important in a startup. So if you are getting into a startup, you have to be prepared with the right sort of attitude. The attitude has three components of it. The first part of it is to grow fast, insanely by learning. So startups offer an insane learning path, extremely fast and this thing, whereas large companies allow you to have a more gradual learning path. So in large companies, you are allowed to you can have more fun and side activities. At a startup, like you should be prepared to spend 2-3 years becoming an expert in that. You might be the world's expert in that particular category just by working in that startup. So there's a lot of attitude towards the work ethic and strong learning that becomes a first essential part. The second essential attitude is attitude towards being in a random world. Yeah, large companies, very, very well organized, everything is sorted out, the processes are set and so on. For good or bad, that is how it is. So it is like a very well kept museum, where all the frames are hanging straight and so on. So you get to observe everything in peace and quiet. Whereas in a startup, it is in the middle of a Mumbai railway station. It is noisy, chaotic. There is people pushing around and so on. It's a pure chaos. And this is whether it is an early Apple, Microsoft, Amazon. They all had this level of chaos inside. So so that's the second key attitude, is being quite open to the chaos that comes in, and then becoming really master of it. And the third key thing we look at is, like if you follow for popular startup personalities like Naval Ravikant, so you could see that they are the key message they would give is creation of wealth requires a very, very specific knowledge that you have to build, that is fairly unique to you, that you can build in a startup. And the biggest way in which you can build wealth is not from salaries, but it's from that specific knowledge. So people in a startup who are looking to enter into a startup should be willing to have preconceptions challenged and so on when taking it up. So it's a complex thing. I primarily look at the attitude towards learning, attitude towards growth, and attitude towards chaos. All those things become very, very important portions of it. We are at this point hiring again. We are looking for strong backend developers and mobile developers at this point. But periodically we hire hardware engineers, business developers, and so on in various roles. But across all the roles, the primary thing you want to fix is attitude. Once you fix attitude, skills can be learned on the job.
As we come towards the end of the episode, sir, is there anything that you would like to leave our audience with? Probably a message for us?
Smart, you guys you're going to a top school. Very, very interesting times these are. So and we are starting a whole new year. It is very, very important for you guys to be thanking your good luck, and be very open to whole bunch of value creation. It is in times of misery that world creates amazing things. So there's an old saying that goes in, like, tough times create tough people create prosperous times create like comfortable people create the tough times. So it is a cycle that goes on. So we are in a sort of a tough world, but these are the tough environments that historically has created amazing companies, amazing people. So rather than get drowning in all that negativity and so on, as an engineer, you should always be looking at what is that problem that I can solve. If there is a problem in the world, it's a good thing. That means you can be a solution to that problem. So rather than wailing in negativity, you guys are from a top college. You should be looking at how can I be a solution for the problem in the world, and start the year by looking at specific problems and start working towards. And by the end of the program, you might have something very interesting. If it becomes very interesting, it could become a startup of its own. Or if it doesn't go even that far, it could become a very interesting story for you to narrate to an interviewer and get into top jobs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. And with that, we come to the end of this episode. It has been very inspiring and motivating talking to you. Thank you for taking out time to do this with us and sharing with us insights from your journey and entrepreneurship as a whole. I would also like to thank our listeners and hope that you've been able to take something valuable today. On that note, until next time, stay home, stay safe.